Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Let's Talk About It. It's your host, Sean Pennington, and today we're going to take a relative dive into PTSD among corrections officers. Now, before we get started, I want to kind of briefly give you an idea about myself. That way, you know a little bit about my background. I talked to you all about in the last podcast. Um, I spent about 2 years in corrections, and with that, I've had, I wouldn't say severe PTSD personally. However, I do exhibit some symptoms that would be diagnosed as such. Um, And in the most general way to describe what PTSD is, by at least a definition, it would be any event or any series of events that, over the course of time, mentally has traumatized you. And when you talk about corrections, I want you to take a moment and I want you to close your eyes for me. And if you have never been in the field, if you've never been in a facility, nothing of that nature, whether you've been a visitor, if you are currently or have been a corrections officer, if you've been a law enforcement officer, or there might be some people out there who have seen it on the other side who have been offenders. However, I want you to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to envision getting ready to enter a facility. Um, Easiest way to describe it, think of the Green Mile or the show Oz that was on HBO in the 2000s. So we're going to set this scene up for you. Let's say you are 30 years old and you have a wife and you have a kid. And so you're getting ready to go into your first day of corrections. You've went through all the physical requirements. You've already went through the interview process. You're there. And now you're getting ready to walk in the door. You start driving. You get to your facility. And let's say for statistic purposes, this facility holds about 400 to 500 offenders. And we won't use a prison setting. We're going to use just a regional jail setting. Because that was what I was part of. I was never actually in the prison portion of the system. However, it still remains the same, regardless of your setting. So now, you come into the front door, you acknowledge the receptionist, and standing before you is a metal detector and an officer that you know. And in front of you is a gate. And upon this gate, you see the halls. You take in the visual settings because at this time you really don't know what's to happen. It all looks empty. And you go. You're cleared to go through. You hear the door open or the gate open. And the gate closes behind you. Now, mind you, that this is the first day for you, so you really don't have anything. All you have right now is your wits about you. You haven't been certified in anything. And you're getting ready to meet your FTO officer. And as you go through, you walk down the hallway, and you meet them. And they go through the course of the events for the day. You know, what your duties are. You know, they ask you about yourself a little bit. And you start noticing the smells of the facility. I wouldn't say it's a repulsive smell, but it's definitely a pungent smell. It is a smell that you've never smelled before. And as you go through, as you're walking down with your field training officer or FTO, the very first thing you hear after all of the introductions are done with you two is an officer assistance call. As you run behind your FTO and you get to your destination, you see lying on the ground one of your brothers in blue or brown or gray or whatever officer colors you have wearing your facilities. Laying there holding the side of his throat because he was sliced with a shiv or a prison shank, or in the easiest terms to tell you, a knife, a homemade prison knife. We won't get into the details of it, you know, as far as, at least on this episode, you know, shiv, shanks, knife, you know, what's the difference, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to go into that. However, this is what you first experience as an officer. And I'm going to tell you personally, I've never witnessed that as a story unfolds. However, I want you to open your eyes for a second. How do you feel? What do you feel? Guess what? For the lines of the corrections officers, that is what they live on a daily basis in all of our facilities in this nation. And with the rise of PTSD, it is a lot of it is an undertold story that they actually have PTSD. Because here's the kicker: because of the short hours and the long hours, they are short-staffed. Some facilities, some states, are underpaid for corrections officers. Guess what? In the state of West Virginia, they actually got a raise to where it's actually decent, barely decent living as a corrections officer. Now, I can tell you personal experience on this that it was about 8, 9 years ago. I was at a family gathering, and I was still a part of my first tour of corrections. And as I'm sitting at this family gathering, it's around the 4th of July, I decide to sit in a chair. And mind you that this is pretty much friends and family. There wasn't any reason to feel threats. There wasn't anything to make me feel unsafe. However, it lasted the better part of 30 seconds. After I sat down in that chair, I could not sit in it anymore. My back was, towards the door. I couldn't see who was coming in, who was coming out, or at least going out. At least people coming in, I would not be able to see them, and it really had messed with me. 8 years later, I have still developed that habit that I cannot be facing away from a door. When I'm walking, there's a certain way that I walk. There is a certain way that I talk. And that is, as far as talking is more professionally. Here you are getting me with the description and the story behind the PTSD. And I know a lot of you all are sitting here saying, well, what's this got to do with the corrections portion of it? Well, I'm going to give you some some stuff here, and I want you to take this into your head for a second. Okay? So, whenever I said the undiagnosed versus diagnosed, PTSD is in that severity level. Here's what I can tell you. Okay? With corrections officers, PTSD has very similar traits to those that serve time overseas in the military. Now, the diagnosed cases of PTSD among corrections officers is a little over 53%. That means 1 out of every 2 corrections officers at some point of their lives, some point in their careers, will develop PTSD. Here's another fact for you, that corrections officers' lives are short. Their average lifespan is 54 years. That's not a very long time, not in today's modern world. And the reason for that is the stress, the mental stress, the physical stress, because I'm here to tell you, the mental stress will put the physical stress on you. You will develop the high cholesterol, the tightness, the anxiety, the trouble sleeping. And here's the thing. I want to tell you all some telltale signs on what PTSD is. And what are the stressors? Okay, so as far as the PTSD within itself, here's some symptoms, okay? Easily startled, feeling tense, on guard, on the edge all the time, difficulty concentrating, difficulty falling or staying asleep, irritability or angry or active aggression, and finally, risky or destructive behavior. Now, I'm not, you know, a doctor of it yet. I'm trying to get my bachelor's, and I will succeed in that. However, this is what I can tell you. I have exhibited those symptoms a lot. I exhibited them over the last 6 years quite a bit. Here's one for you that was not on the list that I just shared with you. The thought about death does not change you mentally. It happens every day. We know. We see it on the news, we live in our lives, we see obituaries about death and what it is for people. And here's the strangest part for me personally out of all of this is as a kid growing up, yeah, I went through my fair share of funerals, and most kids did, you know. At least if you're in a bigger family, and mine was. My father had 9 brothers, one sister, so going through funerals, you know, as a kid, yeah, that's what we did. But here's the thing: is I, as a person, understood what death was like at a very early age. I knew what the signs were. You know, you go to the funeral. You know, you you're somber. You know, you pay your respects. And you go. I can tell you that my father passed away in July 3 years ago. And there was a lot of people that came to the viewing funeral. We had it all in one day, you know, and that was that. Here was the biggest thing though. During the funeral, I shed not one single tear. I could not, even though he passed away. He has been and always will be one of the biggest contributors to my life. I see things on a daily basis that remind me of my father. And every day I have prayers that I will see him again. And for the better part of 6 months, I had, and I will openly say, I've had conversations with him. One way, I spoke aloud. And it took until about a year ago for me to finally break that shell. I had a behavioral psychologist during our academy come down, and we had talked in class. There was a class on stuff, and it really hit me hard, and it had finally broke me. And so deciding to tell this story is part of the PTSD and the struggles with it. I struggle every day. I struggle if somebody comes up behind me. I struggle walking beside people. I struggle even talking with people. And it's not that I can't communicate, I can't talk. I'm not a greatly educated person, however, I can hold my own. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, however, is that on days like today, I'm writing, I'm talking with you all on this podcast, and I'm seeing the world for what it is. It's beautiful. Where I live at is always a beautiful time, even if there's snow and ice. The state I live in is probably one of the most beautiful states I've ever been to or lived in. Now, let's go back to the PTSD. I was talking about the symptoms of PTSD before. I want to talk briefly on stressors. And I'd already made some of these stressors. I'd already talked about some of them. The number one, at least in the prison setting, is the constant violence between or among officers and offenders. I'm sorry, I don't like the word inmate. It's very negative, and I've been want to work on the rehabilitation of an offender because, believe it or not, unless there's a very tragic thing, I do believe that all offenders at some point can be rehabilitated. Now, whether it's at the very, let's say it's their first time being in a facility and they've truly repented for it and they truly don't want to do, they don't want to go through it again. To, let's say, that they never had that one person really be that person to say, hey, I believe in you. I believe that you don't have to be this way. Now, there have been studies that say that it's, lifestyles, how they're raised, how a person's raised, that all contributes to it. And you know what? Some of it's true. In the 90s and early 2000s, they said that violence was on the rise because of video games. I'm here to tell you it's not. I will tell you that if you choose that lifestyle to go out and shoot someone, you've made that choice. I have played video games all my life, still continue to. Guess what? I don't have a murderous bone in my body, not within a human. I'm going to tell you I'm a hunter. I don't do it for, I won't say sport. I do it for the meat. I do it for my family. However, for the actual sport of it, I will say it's not, oh, let's just kill and leave it like, no. Now, I got a little sidetracked there. We're going to go back. So, the very first one was, again, the constant violence. I talked about the shift work, the working overtime, working a lot of hours. Here's the thing is officers in our correction systems work roughly 12 to 16 hours a day. And that's a rough estimate. Some are shorter, some are longer. Mine was roughly a 12-hour day, unless what you caught popped or froze, which means that you stayed over an extra 4 to 6 hours. So, right there. And that goes with the next one, which is understaffing. Our facility, all facilities in West Virginia are understaffed. most, if not all, facilities in the United States are understaffed. So this goes into the next one, which is risk of injury. And the reason I say that is not due to the physical. It's because of offenders who, let's say they want to stay in that setting, will do anything to stay in that setting. So if that means stabbing an officer, guess what? It's going to be stabbing an officer. That's how they make a name for themselves. So some of these go into the work overload, the role conflict. And here's the thing, and when I talk about role conflict, it's not necessarily officer to offender. It's people that you may know. And trust me, I knew a few people that went into our system, went into our facility. I never let it change the way I was. And they addressed me as such. The final one and stressors that are included is lack of family time. And let's go back to the example real quick. The 30-year-old wife and kid at home. Here's the thing. Sometimes you're going to miss birthday parties. You're going to miss family functions. And unfortunately, you're going to miss holidays. That's the life of a corrections officer. That is the story that a lot of people as corrections, they won't tell you right off the bat. Or if they do, they don't make it in that broad spectrum. But I'm going to tell you that is the life of corrections. So as we get ready to finish up, I want to tell you all that there is help out there nationally. I don't want you all to be in that or the uncharacterized, the unnumbered. If you need help, go out, and there is plenty of places. You can go through VA sites online. For corrections, there is a lot of places. And if you live in West Virginia, there is places that you can go. I will actually sit and put a list of them in the description to this podcast. Reach out for help. And if you need me personally, I'm going to have created by now this podcast. I'm going to have done my email. And what I want you to do, I want you to email me or leave in the comments, hey, you know, I need help. Everybody needs help, myself included. But here's the thing, the world is a beautiful place. It can also be a very ugly and mean place as well. But I do know one thing, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I know for most of you all out there, you see it as a beautiful place. The ones with PTSD that are struggling, like I said, we've been there. I've been there. The struggle is very real. But with the struggle and the price, you can break those bonds of PTSD. we're here for you. So until next time, this is Sean Pennington, and let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments what you think the next podcast should be about, and they'll give me some time to look at it. Until then, have a great rest of your day.